What's going on? Welcome back to Off the Schneid. Today we're going to take a look at the New York Football Giants heading into the 2022 NFL Draft. Free agency and trades and stuff like that have kind of wrapped up for the most part. Things are still trickling in here and there, but for the most part, teams are shifting their focus, especially a team like the Giants, are shifting their focus towards the draft in 2 weeks' time, just under 2 weeks. Keep your eyes on the channel. I'm hoping to drop my mock draft 1.0. I only do the one every single year. We'll see what I have the Giants doing. And, they definitely have the capital to make some noise. They got the 2 picks inside the top 7, 5th and 7th. So they definitely, have a bit of an ability to steer the draft a little bit, especially inside the top 10. So up above here, you can see the team needs and then the draft capital, like I talked about for a second there ahead there, or above. Every single pick they have inside the top 182, 2 first-round picks, couple thirds. They got a lot of quality picks, and if they do want to move up a little bit, second or third potentially in this draft, I don't do it if I'm them. I just let the draft come to me, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So let's talk through it here. First and foremost, I want to touch on the coaching staff for this team. If I'm a Giants fan, I am ecstatic. I am super happy with the coaching staff that they've brought in here. Brian Daboll comes over from the Buffalo Bills. You got Mike Kafka, who's friggin' 2 years younger than me, who's been an NFL quarterback, former 4th round pick, I believe, comes from the Chiefs system. He's been kind of fast tracked to this position, and we'll see how he does. But Brian Daboll is a former offensive guy, and I think this will for the most part be his offense, plus a little bit of coming from Mike Kafka. But that's a great opportunity for him, and I think it makes a ton of sense. I love that. And then Wink Martindale coming over from the Baltimore Ravens, I think that's a great. I'm a big believer in Wink Martindale. I think that he's a fantastic defensive coach and defensive mind, and Brian Daboll's a little bit older than Mike Kafka, that's for sure, but Wink Martindale's been around a long time and he knows what he's doing, and I think he's going to be great for this defense. So that's the coaching staff that they've brought in, and I think that it was great hiring by them. So let's start with quarterback like we always do. We got Daniel Jones here, former, what was he, 2nd overall, 3rd overall? I can't remember at this point, but, it's kind of a now or never thing for him. And if I'm the Giants, I kind of see it through, even with the change at head coach. It's not his quarterback, it's a different regime, all that stuff. But I kind of see it through with Daniel Jones and see what he's got, at least for probably the 2 years. I probably do pick up his 5th year option, depending on, how he does this year. So we'll see. But I don't hate Daniel Jones. I really don't. I think he can be good for this team. And I think that, with Mike Kafka and Brian Daboll, I think that it's kind of, it is kind of now or never. And I think he will take that step. I think he'll have success this year. They brought in Tyrod Taylor, who's, always one of the better backup quarterbacks in the NFL. He can start games, obviously. He won a couple games with the Texans last year. He's been with Brian Daboll in Buffalo, I believe. I'm not sure if Brian Daboll was there back then, but either way, I do really like Tyrod Taylor. I think he's a fantastic leader, and I think he'll be good for Daniel Jones. His backup quarterback was Jake Fromm last year, so I don't hate Jake Fromm, don't get me wrong. I kind of like him, but Tyrod Taylor is a step up, absolutely. Let's move over to the running back position. We got Saquon Barkley, who, I've always been a guy where I did the same thing with Dalvin Cook. When he tore his ACL, I avoided him in, fantasy formats and stuff like that. And I fully expected him to struggle the year following his torn ACL. He did. Then he came back with a vengeance and was that guy that, he was supposed to be. I very much expect the exact same thing to happen with Saquon Barkley here. He had an off year after the ACL. He doesn't trust it, that sort of a thing. It's a mental thing a little bit with a lot of these guys. So, I fully expect him to get back to being the guy and the 4th overall, whatever he was, selection. and being a top running back in the NFL. I expect him to get back there this year. Another thing that I expect them fully to do at running back is draft James Cook. I'm very confident they're going to draft James Cook with one of those third-round picks, probably 67th overall. I don't think you're going to have to draft him in the second. We'll see how that goes, and maybe somebody likes him more than the Giants, but I think at 67, they can grab James Cook and have him be their backup quarterback, pass-catching guy, take some of the load off of Saquon Barkley. Maybe you can have him on the field at the same time. James Cook is a very good receiver, and he could play in the slot for this team, in certain packages and certain points throughout the game, and maybe goal line stuff like that. You could do sweeps and swings, screens, all kinds of things you can do with James Cook in any offense, but especially this one. I think that's a great fit, and I know that they really like him. We'll see if they get sniped on James Cook, but I think at 67 overall, they're going to draft him, and he's going to fit right in as the backup running back here. So let's move over to tight ends now. I do think that they're going to need a tight end. I have tight end as a need over here. Ricky Seals-Jones, I think, can get the job done, but I think they're definitely going to have to bring in a rookie tight end, because there's a lot of good depth in this year's draft at tight end. I think they can get their tight end of the future. A guy like Cade Otton is a guy that I really like from Washington. I think that I have him as my number 2 tight end, and I think that he could fit like a glove in this offense and be a guy. Or they could go after one of those strict pass catching tight ends and just have him be a mismatch nightmare. So they could go either route. We'll see how it works out, but I do think they need to address tight end. Tons of picks, doesn't have to happen till at least the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, something like that. Obviously, we'll move over to the offensive line next. This team gets a lot of heat, and people are saying and thinking they have a terrible offensive line. It's really not as bad as you're thinking here. I was certainly not a believer in Andrew Thomas where they drafted him. I was absolutely not a supporter of that, but he played well last year. He really did. He earned that spot, and now he's your starting left tackle that you drafted him to be. So maybe it just took a little bit of learning curve for him to get there, but I think he's gotten there. Matt Pert, he was a 3rd round pick in the same draft. He had a very good year last year. So I think your tackles are settled. I really do. I think, you can add some depth for sure. You always have to have depth, and me, I always want offensive linemen drafted in every single draft for every single team. And that doesn't change for this team here, but there is one hole. So let's work through that. We got Mark Lewinsky, who comes over from the Colts, who's very, very good. John Feliciano comes with Brian Dable from the Buffalo Bills, and they seem to want to give him an opportunity at center. I don't know if I want to do that. If I'm a Giants fan, I don't know if I'm happy to have John Feliciano as my starting center. And then Max Garcia and Shane Lemieux, you're hoping one of those guys can win the job, but I think that there's a hole at left guard. So if you do want to draft, an early offensive lineman, chances are pretty high he's going to be the starting left guard. Maybe you move Andrew Thomas there, but he played well. You don't want him. I don't mess with that personally. So you could draft an offensive lineman in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, something like that. Probably a left tackle that you're going to kick inside to left guard, because I'm not happy with Personally, I'm not happy with the center and left guard positions on the Giants. I think you can upgrade there. Again, it seems like they want to give John Feliciano an opportunity and, give him the opportunity to win it. But if you have some competition there, let the best man win. That's how I always look at it. And that's what I always say. Let's move to the wide receiver position here. This is going to be interesting. I don't particularly see it as a need, especially if they do draft James Cook like I think that they do. But I would not be shocked if one of those 2 first-round picks were wide receiver. Maybe they trade down, but I would not be shocked if they took a wide receiver at 7. I really wouldn't. Kenny Golladay is they're able to walk away from him after this season. It would be a fair amount of dead cap, but I'll get into it later. They're not afraid to eat that dead cap, and I'll touch on that when I get to the defensive side of the ball. They're not afraid to eat that dead cap. He has nothing to do with this coaching staff. He obviously struggled last year. It depends on what happens this year. What happens if he succeeds this year and he's back to 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns? Okay, then that's fine. You obviously aren't going to move on from him, but Sterling Shepard, I'm almost certain he won't be on this team next year. Darius Slayton, they can walk away from him. Kadarius Toney is a good wide receiver, so I'm not walking away from him anyways, but he's obviously still young and he'll be on this team regardless. So I would not be shocked, and obviously it's not a need up here, but I would not be surprised whatsoever if they have wide receiver in one of those first two picks, the 5th and 7th overall selections. So we'll see how it works out, but don't be surprised if they take a wide receiver. Let's move over to the defensive side of the ball here, and we'll touch on that eating dead cap thing later on when we're talking about this defense. Like I said, Wink Martindale comes in, fantastic defensive mind. Justin Ellis comes with him. So let's start on the defensive line from Baltimore. They have Jihad Ward there as some depth. Dexter Lawrence, Darius Williams, and Justin Ellis are all very good. I do think that they could grab a nose tackle. Obviously, I have it here to, basically for Justin Ellis to literally just mentor and be the nose tackle of the future kind of a thing. Not that you need a starting nose tackle right now, but you're going to have to address it. And, like I said, I think Wink Martindale can get that done with a guy like Justin Ellis, who's kind of an underrated leader. I think he can do that, especially with, guys like Darius Leonard there as well. So I think they're okay in this 3-4, edge rusher defense type of a thing. And we'll move it back to the edge rushers. Quincy Rochet, that was shocking that pardon me. That was shocking that the Pittsburgh Steelers moved on from him. He fits the edge rusher position like a glove, and I think he was a 6th-round pick, and that was a bit of a steal. And then they just let him go, kind of a thing, and the Giants pounced on him. So that was a good move. I like Quincy Rochet. I think he can do some good things. But Azeez Ojulari was a guy that I had as a 1st-round talent. I had him as a 1st-round pick, coincidentally, to the Baltimore Ravens in my mock draft last year. So, if you want to check that out, go check that one out. But, I thought he was going to be a Raven, and I thought obviously in the similar defense. So I think Wink Martindale's absolutely ecstatic to have him. I do like Ellerson Smith. He didn't really play last year, but I do really like him. But they're going to have to add a guy, absolutely. Lorenzo Carter, I don't know if they'll bring back. I'm not sure if he's signed somewhere else or not, but he was, pretty good for this team for a few years, but he's off the team right now. We'll see if he does end up coming back. So I do have edge rusher as the number one need here, and I know that they really like Kayvon Thibodeau. So if he does squeak to 5 and they're able to draft him there, I think that they definitely pull that trigger and grab him. And then there's Trayvon Walker. There's a couple other guys in there that they could grab, and maybe Jordan Davis, but not likely he's going to get drafted that early, in my opinion. If I'm going to draft Jordan Davis, I'm trading back from one of those picks. But he would be a great fit in this defense, don't get me wrong. There's a couple other guys in there, but I won't, bore you with all that nonsense. Watch the mock draft and see what I have them doing. Middle linebacker position, Blake Martinez will probably be off this team as well. He's coming off a torn ACL, and this is the final year of his contract. Tay Crowder, very pleasant surprise, 7th-round pick. He led this team in tackles last year. So they do need a linebacker as well, like I have here, interior, inside linebacker. I do think that that's absolutely a need, and they have the picks to address it relatively early. Maybe a Chad Muma, something like that, Christian Harris, someone like that to come in and potentially start right away. But you're hoping that Blake Martinez and Tay Crowder can be your guys, and then once Blake Martinez moves on, whoever you draft this year slides right in and you don't miss a beat. So we'll move it back. We'll talk about safeties for a second here because I want to touch on this dead cap money that they're not afraid to eat. Obviously, they cut Logan Ryan, who I think it's like 10 and a bit dead cap money that they're eating this year, and I'm not sure if they have some moving forward in the next couple seasons. I think they do next year, but go take a look at the contract details if you really want to know. But they're not. What I'm getting at is they're not afraid to eat dead cap if they have to, if they think it's going to make their team better in the long run. So we'll see how they feel about Kenny Golladay, because they're going to have to eat a fair amount of dead cap if they choose to move on from him after this season and draft a wide receiver early 5th or 7th. So there you go. There's that. Xavier McKinney was, I believe he was my safety 1 in 2 years ago when he was drafted in the 2nd round. 2020 draft. He was my safety 1 out of Alabama. Very, very good safety. I thought he torn Achilles, I believe. He missed all of his rookie season, came back, played well last year. And then I think, with him and Julian Love, I think Julian Love is the reason that they felt they were okay with moving on from Logan Ryan, because he had a decent year last year. He played pretty well, former 4th round pick, and, hopefully he can take another step forward and be a leader on this defense. Corners are in an okay spot, but they're going to have to add as well. Like I said, or like I have here, it's the number 2 need in my opinion. But James Bradbury, there's a lot of talk about him getting traded, potentially released, stuff like that I wouldn't have done. They signed him to that contract to do exactly what he did last year. He had a very good year, and he's their number 1 corner, absolutely. And Dory Jackson, former Tennessee Titan, he played very well last year as well. So they're okay, I think, as far as their starting corners are concerned. And then Darnay Holmes, he had some injuries last year, but he's a quality nickel corner as well. Aaron Robinson's a 3rd round pick last year. Rodarius Williams, 6th round pick last year. So in my opinion, you're going to have to add a corner. If Sauce Gardner's there at 5, I'm jumping all over that too. So realistically, Kayvon Thibodeau, Sauce Gardner at number 5, which if either of those 2 guys are there, hopefully they're not both there, because then you're worried about if somebody takes them at 6. But one of those 2 guys are the 2 guys that personally I fully expect the Giants to draft, as long as I don't have them gone. We'll see. Again, check the mock draft for what I do. But I think those are their 2 big targets, in my opinion, at 5. And then I see a potential of them taking a wide receiver at 7. We'll see how it all works out. But I think that wraps it up. So yeah, there you go. There's your New York Giants heading into the draft. This is a good team. I do want to touch on this. I'm loving what they're doing. If I'm a Giants fan, I'm happy with the direction the franchise is going. You're hoping that Daniel Jones is still your guy. If he's not, we'll see what they do next year's draft. There's obviously a ton of quarterbacks, and if they struggle as a team and have a top 10 pick again, they're probably going to be able to grab one of those quarterbacks that, everybody sees as difference makers, and I do as well. So, we'll see. Either Daniel Jones is your guy or he's 100% not, and you'll find that out this year. So that's to me, that's honestly comforting. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You're going to know 100% in my opinion, unless he has like some sort of mediocre year, they almost make the playoffs and they have a low draft, then, you're in a bit of a different situation. But as far as the coaching staff is concerned, I would be ecstatic, and I would love the direction that I feel that this coaching staff can take them. So there you go. Let me know what you think in the comments. There's your depth chart breakdown, draft capital. I gave you some names for draft picks, stuff like that. Check the mock draft coming out. Let me know what you think in the comments. There's your breakdown for the 2022 New York Giants.